You're on.
All right, thank you all for coming out. We appreciate it. We appreciate you coming out for the Pine Hill Shores Council on Aging. This morning we are pleased to have a wonderful speaker and just removed interim executive director now of the Crystal Coast Hospice House, Ms. Kate Cool. I'm sure if you lived here for any length of time, you've had a conversation with a friend or a neighbor that's used the facility or a loved one nearing the end of their life. On a personal note, about a year ago, my mother ended up having to spend her last days there, and she had 2 types of cancer. Was dealing with dementia, loss of sight. She was in the hospital here for 2 weeks straight, and she got in for the last few days of her life. And I can tell you, we were fortunate, and she was made comfortable, by the staff. They were fantastic. I can't say enough about them, to be honest with you. I don't ever want to have to go back there, unless I volunteer. But I mean, starting with right when we walked in the door, we were greeted, and everybody was welcoming us with open arms, letting us know how much they cared. It's truly another place, and we thank God that there's a facility like that here. So I don't want to talk. You can come to see me talk. So let me turn the forum over to Ms. Kate Cool, and she is going to walk us through some things, and I appreciate it. Thank you, Kay.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for inviting. I appreciate that you guys invite. This is not even on, so I'm just going to ignore that. I am Kay Cool, and I am the executive. I'm not in the interim anymore. The board of directors voted me in as permanent executive director, and I'm thankful to be in that role. I have worked on staff for the foundation of the Crystal Coast Hospice House for over 7 years as the office coordinator, reporting to the executive director, and he resigned. And then I stepped in as interim and am now a permanent executive director, and I'm thankful for this position. In the 7 years that I've worked for the Crystal Coast Hospice House, I've learned a lot about what it took to have a hospice house in Carteret County. It was from dedication and commitment from the community of Carteret County, but also 5 counties in which it supports. We couldn't just justify it within Carteret County, the need for a hospice house. We had to expand into 5 counties, which is Carteret, Craven, Onslow, Pamlico, and Jones. But the majority of the families who we've supported is in Carteret and then Craven. And this is our 10th year anniversary of being opened as a hospice house, and we have served well over 2,100 families since we've opened. And we all have end of life. And nobody looks forward to that. That person doesn't, I don't, my family doesn't, but it's a fact. And this hospice house is just a wonderful option for you, for me, for our families, for end of life, for that transition. And if you haven't been into that hospice house, I strongly encourage you to do that. You're welcome anytime to walk through. We always have a volunteer right at the door, and they can walk you through, or they can find someone to walk you through. And when you walk through, you would get a wonderful peace. It doesn't feel like or smell like a hospital. It is a house. It's a beautiful, beautiful house. So if your own house isn't a good option, please consider this hospice house. And check us out on our website and Facebook page, and you'll learn a lot about what it took to build that here. In Carteret County, it was built by private citizens, not by the government. We did not have a lot of government support. It was a lot of bureaucracy to make it happen. But it took a lot of love and passion, compassion and dedication. It started even before 2008. Raise your hand if you had anything to do with the building of this hospice house. I don't know who all's been around. I needed to introduce a couple of people here. So Patty Schweiss and Dick Brevnick, would y'all please stand up? I'm putting them on the spot right now. They both live in Pine Knoll Shores. They're your neighbors. And they are on our board of directors. Patty Schweiss was a founding board member, and she's continued to volunteer and be a supporter of the hospice house. And she's currently back on the board of directors, and she'll do anything and everything she can to support the hospice house, except for public speaking. Because that's just not her thing. Dick Brevnick is the chair of our board of directors, and we're thankful to have him. He was the CEO of Carteret Healthcare for a number of years before he retired, and then he came onto our board, 3 years ago?
Just about this January.
Yeah, and now he is our chair. So he comes with, Patty's a retired nurse, he's a retired CEO. Our board is diverse. We've got business, we have attorneys, we have nurses, we have doctors. We try to make it to where we have a combination of all, so we get the opinions of all that support this community to build this hospice house, because it takes a lot to build it, or it took a lot to build it, and it continues to take a lot to maintain it. Again, it's 10 years old, and so now y'all can sit down. I'm sorry. 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 Yeah, I feel like I'm leading a church. I was like, you stand up, right. Anyway, but it does take a lot to run this hospice house. Let me give you a little bit of a rundown. It took over $5 million to build this hospice house. That was by private donations, fundraisers, grants, and a variety of things to raise that money. And since we've been open, we've raised over $7 million because, like I said, it takes a lot to build it, but also to continue to operate it. So we're continuing we are nonprofit. The hospice house is nonprofit, and the folks that run it inside, I'll explain that in a minute, but we have a group that we have a lease agreement with that operates the care of the patients and the families, and that group is a hospice organization called 3HC. So I don't know if you guys have started looking around hospice organizations. There's a lot. Hospice is not one great big organization. There's several different organizations of hospice care, hospice support. So there's Gentiva, there's 3HC. I think the hospital has their own hospice group. So there's just a variety of different hospice, in-home hospice care groups around everywhere. But 3HC is who we contracted with and created a lease agreement for them to be in our house providing compassionate care for the patients, but also for the families. And they help to maintain the house itself. So what I do and what Dick does and what Patty does and the board of directors does as a kind of a foundation is we make sure that house is an exceptional operational house and a beautiful house. So it can be comfortable for the families that come through there. So when the group, the founding members and committees decided to build the house, they worked with 3HC because 3HC had the experience of hospice houses, because they also have a house in Goldsboro called Kitty Askins, which is much bigger than the one here. Kitty Askins is like 26 beds, 28 beds, something like that. 24 beds, no, it's more than that. It's a lot of beds. I've never been there myself. I'm going there in October to visit it for the first time, so I'm looking forward to visit it. But anyway, the people back in 2008 and before visited a lot of different hospice houses to see, to look for the good, the bad, and the ugly, and take the good and bring it to Carteret County. And so they've learned a lot from their research, and they decided at this point to build 10 beds into this hospice house. So this hospice house that's available to you or to your family members there's 10 beds. 6 beds are acute and 4 beds are residential. And you have to get a doctor referral. You can call the number if you've got a brochure. There's telephone numbers that you can call. You can call this patient referral line just to even get general information about what it takes to get referred into the hospice house, and they're very helpful. They'll tell you the steps it takes to get on that referral list. The acute care is for end of life that is 1 week or less. And even if your family member comes in for 24 hours, they are thankful to have been in there for those 24 hours. Those 6 beds, we try to keep them utilized as best as we can by working with 3HC and their referral process and strengthening their referral process. Then the residential side is terminal illness, end of life transition up to 6 months. So people tend to stay on the residential side for 6 months, and those rooms are in demand. There is a constant waiting list for the residential side because we have the reputation of being an exceptional house for that phase of life, and so that is a waiting list currently. The acute side, there is currently no waiting list, but we're so they do strive to, you hate to talk business, but they do strive to not let those rooms be empty for long because there is that need. There is a plan, and we hope that we can expand the hospice house at some point. Unfortunately, the only way you can expand and go through the bureaucracy and the certificate of need is to show that there is a waiting list for a period of time and a good amount of people on that waiting list for at least a year. So it's a lot to build and expand a hospice house or any kind of healthcare facility. You got to go through the certificate of need. It's a big process. So for now, we've got kind of 2 phases going on. Our first phase is to continue to upgrade and enhance the existing hospice house and see and create better ways that we can better support our communities, our 5 counties, and raise awareness, because a lot of people still, even 5 miles away, still don't understand that hospice house. So we're continuing to look at ways to raise awareness and make sure people realize how wonderful that is to have right here in Newport, North Carolina, in Carteret County. It really is, it is nice. I kind of laugh because a lot of times I feel like Carteret County's in competition with Craven County. Craven County always seems to get the best of the best, and Carteret County always feels left out. Why don't we have a this or that and the other? Well, guess what? We have our very own hospice house right here in Carteret County. And so I'm not saying we have the upper hand, but as I said in the statistics, most of the people, because they feel like it's so convenient, most of the people that go into that hospice house are coming out of Carteret County. But when you look at the map, here's the map. This is the area that we support. And so this is where our hospice house is. These are the 5 counties. And really, it's not that far of a drive from Carteret, Jones, and Onslow, and Pamela. It's not that far of a drive. But, even, I live up in Seagate on Highway 101, and I come into Newport or Morehead City, that's a long drive. Well, it isn't. And I came from Raleigh, and I used to live in Apex and work at NC State, And that drive was was a heck of a lot more of a pain to get to than from Seagate into Newport, or from Seagate into Morehead City. It's really a lovely drive. So I try to tell people it's not that far. It's really not. And they're nice drives. So, I mean, when the founding members worked with the, oh, I'm sorry.
You're off camera.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
I'm gonna get a picture of the map.
So, sorry.
That's
Take
right.
your water.
There you go, hold it up.
Okay, so when
There you go.
the founding board members and worked with their committees, they started making a priority, so, okay, we need property. This property came up by Pat Joyce. I don't know if you've ever heard of Pat Joyce and Joyce and Associates. He had a group of partners on that property there in Newport, and they sold it to us for a very reasonable price. And from there, it just started rolling where the money was coming in, because people realized, oh, they're serious about this. They have bought this property. That's where it's at. We're gonna support this big time. And that's what happened. It really is in about the best location you can have. If you go down Highway 70, heading toward from, where are you at here? Okay, yeah. So if you're leaving, going down Highway 70 out of Morehead City, it's right on the right-hand side. It's that beautiful house on the right-hand side. You really can't miss it. But a lot of people's like, what is that? Well, that's the hospice house. And we've actually talked about trying, because Pine Knoll Shores has your cute little signs with arrows and stuff. We want signs like that for the hospice house. We're gonna figure out how we can have arrow signs for the SECU Crystal Coast Hospice House. And it's really named SECU Crystal Coast Hospice House because SECU is the state employees credit union, and they donated $1 million. So because of that $1 million, that's the name of SECU Crystal Coast Hospice House. So we don't always use SECU in our promotionals, but it is the SECU Crystal Coast Hospice House. And another naming opportunity was that, I don't know what the name of that road was at the time, but Big Rock Fishing Tournament, Blue Marlin, donated $250,000. And so the street was named Big Rock Way, not just W-A-Y. I don't even know how DOT allowed this, but it's Big Rock Way, W-E-I-G-H. Now that's unique. So they had the road named after them because of that big donation. We do have other naming opportunities, and we've had a lot of things named on donors' behalfs all throughout the hospice house. Everything has a plaque. But there are some things without plaques because we still have some naming opportunities. Because again, we continue to need to do upgrades and enhancements for the families and for the patients. One recent request that I haven't even brought to the Board of Directors' attention, which I will in October when we meet, is that one of the family members has said, those TVs are awful small and it's hard to watch TV. And so we got to looking at them, and it's like, well, they were put in 10 years ago and they've held up real well. But there are nicer, lighter weight, easier to see smart TVs now that the patients and the families could certainly appreciate more than what they have. So tomorrow we're replacing all the recliners in the rooms. So the rooms don't look like hospital rooms. They look like, they're a very comfortable bedroom. And it has options for families to stay. You can stay 24/7. There is a couch that folds into a bed. And then we're just replacing recliners that's 10 years old with new recliners that are they're all being replaced tomorrow. I don't think I told y'all that either. There's a lot going on. So they didn't even know I was speaking today. And Patty's like, I saw you're speaking. I was like, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to tell y'all. Anyway, there's just a lot going on. So yeah, we're having all the recliners replaced tomorrow, thanks to the donations that we receive. Speaking of donations, so we do receive general again, we're a nonprofit, and so we operate from private donations and in memory of donations and fundraisers. So we receive general donations. When people do pass away, we will receive in memory of donations. And then we do the fundraisers. So those funds are used to continue to maintain and operate and enhance our hospice house. So that's where the funds for the recliners come from and for the TVs come from. We're also investing some of the money coming in for future expansion. Because like I said, we want to grow if there truly is a need to grow in these 5 counties, and I feel like there is that need. There will be that need. There is that need simply because we have a waiting list already for the residential side. And once we get out and further raise awareness to this hospice house, we'll for sure see the need because of the waiting list that I see coming, just because of, I mean, it's 10 beds. And you know what, the population is increasing in all of these counties. Y'all know it. I mean, they're building a big old highway coming this way, so people are coming in this direction. So we want to do what we can to support the folks that come into these communities by establishing more of a need for a larger hospice house. So I think I kind of explained it a little bit. So I'm the executive director of the Crystal Coast Hospice House, and we have a board of directors, and we're a nonprofit. But we did not have the skill set to provide the actual care. That takes some special people to be in those rooms and love on those people and love on the families. And so the folks that built the hospice house said, how are we gonna make that happen? And so they started looking at organizations and businesses that do that, and they chose 3HC. And these brochures right here are also here. And so this provides more information about actually 3HC. Now 3HC provides the care in the hospice house, but they also have in-home hospice care also. They also do occupational therapy and physical therapy. They have a lot of services, not just at our house, but we stand by them and we're thankful that they're at our house because of all the other different types of service and support they can provide to all of us. Pulling out of the hospice house, just an extra plug with 3HC, my husband fell. He just fell, broke his femur right here and had to get a rod in and screws and all that, and needed physical, because you're supposed to not, move much. We decided to request in-home PT, OT, and I didn't even know. They said, well, I think we're gonna choose 3HC. I said, well, darn, I didn't even know that they offered that service. So we jumped on it. We was like, yeah, let's support 3HC. And so they came to our house and provided that service as well. So 3HC is a really good organization. Again, they're also nonprofit. They're not trying to make money off of you guys. They're just trying to pay their bills because they're also a nonprofit. So they never look at people's financial status to have anybody come into the hospice house. They are the ones that work with the families on Medicare, Medicaid, life, long-term care, insurance, all that confusing stuff. They're the ones that handle all of that. We do not. They do. But they're good at it. They know what they're doing. They know what the rules are. They know what they're going to get back. It's a challenge for them because of the changes in healthcare and reimbursements or lack thereof with Medicare. It's really frustrating. It's really sad that it's come to that point. But they do not turn anybody away because of that. If you're referred by a doctor and all those little boxes are checked, then you're on that list. And then they work with the whole financial aspect of it all. But that's one of their skill sets, is dealing with all of that, of the care of the folks that are in that house. In the house, again, there's the 10 beds. There's also a family atmosphere kitchen. And it's got all the products, all the accessories you would need to cook a meal in that kitchen. It's not commercial, it's not restricted to just the staff. If you have a family member in there, you can go in that kitchen and cook a meal, cook that person's favorite meal or cook your favorite meal. And you can also cook for the rest of the families and the rest of the staff in that hospice house if you so desire. We do support and encourage meals to be brought in, home cooked meals for families and staff. So we have a meal train link. If anybody's familiar with meal train and how to schedule meals, you can go online to our website and book a meal for a day, for a lunch or a dinner, or call the number. And if you don't do that online stuff, and they can put you on the schedule to provide a meal. Home cooked meals are awesome, and it's a great way to support these families, because you're in a zone when you get to that point where you have someone end of life and dealing with all that. You're in a zone, and you don't have time to think about where your meal's coming from. So we do try to encourage having meals brought into that house and into that kitchen, or even there to cook. We even have a grill. We have outside the kitchen, there's a patio with a grill that's operational, so people are even allowed to come in there and cook hamburgers and hot dogs. So we also have 4 different types of family rooms. We have a huge family room as soon as you walk in. And then we have 2 smaller family rooms on each side, one on the acute side, one on the residential side. And then we have a little parlor library. And that's more for people who are there. They don't want to leave or be far from their family, but they still have to work. And so that room has a desk and hookups and everything for people who need to actually work and set up a laptop or whatever they need to do, have a conference call. Bless you. And then we have a chapel. It's adorable. I love the hospice house so much that I've declared that as my church right now. I love it. It's my church. And so I go into that chapel. I have a daily devotional book that I leave in there. And when I have 5 minutes to spare or 10 minutes to spare, I sit in that chapel and I read my daily devotion and I pray. And so I just love it. And then I just love it. I'm sorry, but I do. And no, I'm not sorry. I love it. And I haven't even had the experience of having a family member there like you have. You love it because of, you probably loved it before, but you extra love it because of what you went through. Absolutely. And it just brings, I just love what it offers to that person, but also to the families. If you're there and you even have time to walk around back, there's a brick walkway around back of the hospice house, and there's fountains and a little waterfall and beautiful gardens that Garner's Landscaping takes care of for us. And it's got a brick memorial garden that if you wanted to even go back there and reflect 10 years later, whatever, there's benches and gazebos that you can sit back there and feel peace and joy and the presence. And so the bricks are for sale. There's 3 sizes of bricks in this memorial garden, 4x8s, 8x8s, and 12x12s. And it's there's probably over 400 bricks that have been engraved in this memorial garden, in memory of, or in honor of, or thankful for, and appreciation of. So it's not just about in memory of, it's for a lot of other people who have given a lot of heart and soul into that hospice house. But it's primarily a memorial garden. But there's trails all around there, and it's just a beautiful place. And we just have a lot of property even beyond that we could do more with in time. It's got plenty of parking. Each room has its own little private patio, y'all. It's just got, I feel like it's got about all you can think of, except for it's got small TV, so we're gonna work on that. But again, it's because, it's 10 years old now, so things things have changed, appliances have changed, couches have changed, recliners have changed, and so we do try to enhance it and upgrade it for the comfort and compassionate of our patients and families. What did I forget? So there are, if you're interested in walking through, again, the front door is open. You don't need to schedule an appointment. I'm happy though to meet you there and walk you through myself. But the staff in there would welcome you anytime. If you're just riding by, it's like, let's stop by there because it's right there. So it's fine to do that right now. It wasn't during COVID, obviously. There was a lot of things that changed during COVID, and it still has affected us now because people are still a little nervous about going into environments other than their own space. But where the doors are open and it's very well maintained. And so we would welcome you to come and visit. If you'd like to volunteer, there are ways to volunteer as well, from bringing meals to snacks to waters to just sitting with a family member who is in a room that maybe the family is unable to stay there 24/7, but they don't want to leave that family member alone. There are ways to just sit with that person and be there. But there's a lot of other administrative ways you can help as well. Again, I encourage you guys to visit it at any time if you'd like to know more about it. It's just a great option. I'd much rather have my family member be there than in a hospital. And if you get that diagnosis or that message from the doctor that there's nothing they can do, then you need to speak up, because our doctors here come and go. So maybe even our doctors forget that hospice house is an option. So we need to be advocates for ourselves and say, well, what about, can we move our person to the hospice house? You've got to speak up and be an advocate for that as well. So I encourage you to kind of keep us in mind as an option for that phase. What have I forgotten, Patty and Nick? Did I do all right?
Did great.
Do you guys have questions?
Yeah, or talk to the difference between in-home hospice and then what happens in facilities such as this.
Okay, so in-home hospice care, that person, and it depends on the situation of the needs of the person at home. But a hospice nurse could come in every day or 2 or 3 times a week. They would teach the families how to administer the meds. But they are not there 24/7 like they are at the hospice house. Get that? But again, in-home hospice care is an awesome option, but they are not there 24/7. I'm not sure how often they come in when it gets to in-home hospice care, but I think it varies.
It does vary. However, in-home hospice, the family is the caregiver.
Turn this one back. Say that again.
In-home hospice, the family is the caregiver. So you have an aide maybe come in once or twice, 3 times a week, or a nurse to check on. But as Kay said, the medications, families are taught how to give the medications and the times and everything, and but that is the true difference. The family is the caregiver. One of them has to opt to be the caregiver.
Yeah, so it really is. I feel like the hospice house is the best way. But again, I know how uncomfortable that can be for people, and so the in-home hospice care certainly is a viable option. It's just a different type of option, with not as good of a hospice care as it is at the hospice house.
Yes, I see you have respite care.
Yes, ma'am.
Would you elaborate on that a little bit?
So respite care is offered if a residential room is available. And what that means is if you're taking care of someone and you just need a break, you can call the hospice house and say, I'd like to put Jim, in a room for a week or two. But from what I understand, the only way they can do that is if a residential room is
And
available.
they're waiting list.
And there's a waiting
a
list.
waiting
So it's,
Not an option.
it's currently not an option because the waiting list for residential side is lengthy.
Thank you.
I know. And I'm sad for that, because I know a lot of people could use that break. And it's a great thing that we have to offer, but unfortunately, because of the waiting list. Now, you can, so from what, I'm still learning how the referrals and the waiting list process works. I'm new in this role as executive director, and the 3HC staff is in charge of that referral list and the waiting list. And so I'm still trying to understand how that works. But even like if you have somebody and you think that you might need respite care from time to time, I believe you can be put on that list, that waiting list. And if a room comes open and you're up there, they'll call you and say, are you ready for that break? And then you can jump on it and stay for a week or two. I believe that's how it works. Yes, ma'am.
Who decides the need? Is it the doctor? Is it the family? Is it together? Basically, the first time you mentioned need was when the plans were being developed. And when you only come up with 10 beds, and I look around in 5 counties.
Yeah.
How many people are living and dying, and have disabilities and needs? I would have thought the need was greater than 10 beds.
So I was not here at the time. Patty can probably better answer that, but from what I understand, because the founding board was so new at even the thought that they could even make it happen, they went with a 6-bed acute and a 4-bed residential, because, so for staffing, from what I understand, the way they do staffing, 6 beds is better than 4 or 8, the way the formula is for staffing. And also, in order to not have to build a commercial kitchen, which is expensive, very expensive, I think at that time they could only have 10 beds. And so they were wanting to be smart, reasonable, and start with the 10 beds with the thought that at some point they could expand. So that's kind of why. You want to come up here and chime in too? Because
I'm fine right here. The issue at that time was the CON. The state mandates what you can or cannot do. And we went through many times going to Wilmington, Greenville, Durham, to petition the state that we needed these beds. And also at that time, and I'm not sure if it's changed again, but it went by the number of deaths in your county. We did not quite meet that. So that's kind of how we incorporated all the other areas. So
You said number of what?
Deaths.
deaths, I'm sorry, yes.
Let's kick it up a notch.
yeah.
The other
So
thing
that's how that
I think you
happened.
asked the first part of your question had
Yeah.
to do with who makes these decisions. You know, really should be the patient is an equal partner, or the patient and family with the doctor. The doctors could be your primary care physician as well as the hospitalist. So I think most people are familiar with hospitalists, but they may not know the familial situation as well. So they're not gonna know a patient and family's desires, but that's why it's real important. And the others would be the discharge planners at a hospital, who generally are backgrounds in nursing, not always, and that's a real positive. I think the nurses are more attuned and think about these things. Because physicians, and I'm not trying to be critical, but having spent 42 plus years of my life in hospitals, they're trained to think about cure.
Yeah.
And we all hope for a cure, but we all know, as Kay mentioned, there are points when we know it's about care and not about cure. So I think it's real important, as Kay said, always challenge and don't be bashful. Speak up and say, this is what we wanna be a part of this decision, so. But that's the group of people.
So can you keep your own doctor and still be in hospice house? Or is that responsibility transferred to 3HC or to hospitalist or some other physician?
I believe you can always, oh gosh. I'm moving around.
It's all right, I can track it. I can find you.
I believe when they get a room, the doctor is always available. But they would then partner with the hospice house medical staff and nursing staff to make sure the meds for end of life, the comfort care, compassionate care is provided. Because at that point, they're pretty much relieved of the meds to
So you say
cure.
you can keep your own doctor, I'm sorry.
Is that correct, Dick and Patty? Yeah.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
absolutely can. There's a
Yeah.
medical director
There's
at the hospice, and your own physician can always try to work with that. And the key is, since, again, especially primary care physicians are gonna be very busy in their office, they may not always be routinely available, but they can communicate their desires, their knowledge of the patient and family's wishes with the hospice medical director.
They would never turn them away.
Right.
The same goes for chaplains and ministers and stuff too. The hospice house does have our own chaplain, but at that point, bring them on, ministers, pastors, chaplains, whatever's. Everybody's welcome in the hospice house, and again, the doctors, if you want your doctor's input to make sure the doctor agrees with what type of palliative care or comfort care they're getting, that's always available to the doctor.
I will say, when Mom was in the hospital, right from the start, they knew her background and what she was going through, and they started that process. Maybe I got lucky with the nurse, I'm not sure. But they started that process immediately, and I answered the 300 questions that they asked you at the hospital for that. But I was definitely happy to make that happen, and at the time, y'all were full. I mean, you were full, and 2 weeks, later, she got there, so.
Yeah.
But, so,
Yeah.
just ask your nurse. She could fit in the hospital.
Is there a difference by the type of insurance you have?
Well, like I said, that is not a factor into getting on a waiting list or getting on the referral list and getting a room. Insurance, financial, whatever is not a factor.
So it's all.
They'll ask those questions because obviously they're gonna process, those questions are gonna be asked and they obviously will go through those motions. But that is not what, it's not on the vetting process to
So
get.
your own insurance, your own Medicare takes care of the costs associated with being in hospice?
Yes, and I don't have the price list on, and again, I don't,
Nobody does, actually.
what's that?
Nobody does. They can tell you what it costs.
But yeah, there is a certain formulation, and Medicare changes all the time. But 3HC are the people who take care of those and knows those more than we do. So you could call that number and they could probably give you more information about how that works.
And if you don't have insurance, can you?
Yes.
Still be there?
Yeah.
I just like to add one thing, what he was saying. We've lived here for 17 years. I've had an occasion to go out there and visit some neighbors. And I've actually, it's a very welcoming place. As soon as you go in, retired golfer Curtis Strange donated the garden right front.
Yeah.
You met with the staff. The individual rooms, the patients can bring in some belongings from home.
Absolutely.
And I've actually known two. One of them left to go to Crystal Bus, the other one left to come home, to hospice care at home. I mean, they eventually died, but
Yeah,
hospice is not the end of the road sometimes.
that's correct. That is a good point, and I appreciate that you mentioned that, because you might think that your loved one has, or the doctor might think it might be 6 months, but It may not be 6 months, but that's the criteria for being in that hospice house is 6 months. So if 6 months comes and you're still kicking, or your family member is, then you have to look at other options. There are ways to extend that or make exceptions to that rule. They definitely have done that in the past. It just all depends on the situation. But when it comes to residential side, I met a lady that was in there and sat with her a couple of times, and she went past that 6 months, but while she was there, they moved in, and it looked just like her house. I mean, she had all sorts of, they moved the hospice house recliner off to the side so she could have her own little personal recliner. Because that was the request by her. She wanted to sit in her own little recliner, not the hospice house recliner. Even though the hospice house recliner is beautiful and comfortable, she wanted to sit in her own. And so that question was asked, and the nursing director that's at the hospice house said, well, if you can make that fit and keep that other recliner in there, then have at it. And so that recliner came in there with a bunch of other little doodads and dollies and all sorts of stuff. Pets are welcome also. It just makes me smile to see a dog come in, or a cat come in. I know, but they come right in and go straight into that room. But it's just, we do try to make them feel just as home as they can feel.
Okay, do I understand this correctly? You're only funded by your fundraisers and donations?
That's correct.
That is your only source of income?
That's correct.
So all of the care that's in the home is through 3HC?
That is correct.
And I suppose they are funded by insurance and maybe
Yes.
state or federal funds?
That's how they
apply to
sustain
that?
is through insurance, Medicare, Medicaid. That's the money that comes into them. They also do some fundraising,
So
because
are they
they're,
private also?
I'm sorry,
Are they private also?
they're nonprofit.
Nonprofit?
Private.
We both are nonprofit.
Okay.
And so, yeah, they've struggled more than we have, honestly, with raising those funds because of having to deal with the lack of, what's that word? Reimbursements from insurance companies, Medicare. It's gotten worse and worse. It really has. It's been a real challenge for them. But that's how it is for orthopedic surgeons, and I mean, the healthcare in general is fighting with insurance and Medicare and Medicaid. It's just, it's just messed up. But they're still determined to provide compassionate care.
Well, thank God that you are on fundraisers and donations.
Yeah, I
And we
know.
better pay attention the next time you have a fundraiser.
Yeah, so that would be the gingerbread festival right here. So I have information about that gingerbread festival. That is our primary fundraiser for the foundation side of things. We are also working with 3HC, our care people, because we do want them to not be challenged with providing the best exceptional compassionate care possible. So they need funds. You know, we need funds to maintain the house and their lease, but they need funds to provide the care.
But you don't commingle.
We are commingling as best as we can.
Oh, you do? with
We
3HC.
do commingle, but we're gonna be commingling even more.
Okay. Oh, in other words, you'll be helping them.
Yes, we're looking at ways where
Thank
it's
you.
a big topic, a hot topic right now, how we can help them. How can we better understand why they're struggling so much? We're trying to understand this Medicare problem, insurance problem, and try to better understand the changes that's really affected them so we can better partner with them. We really are. Yeah, because it means that much to us.
Well, I have found out personally that there's not much transparency when it
Yeah.
comes to Medicare.
Yeah, it's.
I mean, you just dig and nobody's really responsible for
Yeah.
what.
Yeah, it's.
Do you have a special room for children?
Yeah, I forgot about that. Right, so as soon as you walk in the front doors, to the right is this huge family room. And then off the family room is a children's room with stuffed animals and books and electronic games and floor space, tables for drawing, coloring books and crayons. So yes, we have space for kids.
Good.
Mm-hmm, yep. Yes,
Are
ma'am.
children patients there?
we have had kids. Whew, yes, we've had kids. We've had all ages.
When you provide in-home care, oftentimes I've heard people get a hospital bed, they get crutches, they get other things to help them stay at home, but set themselves up
Yeah.
for better care. And you provide all of that? or
We
insurance
don't,
provides
3HC does.
Through Medicare.
Right.
Or Medicare does, but again, we're just the house. The foundation, what me and Dick and Patty do, we are the house. So we really don't have, the business of the in-home options and resources, but 3HC does. And they can provide that or tell you where you can go get those pieces of furniture or whatever. I know when my husband broke his leg and we had to go buy transport a wheelchair or whatever, just because I just needed to make a decision real quick. But since then, I found out that St. James United Methodist Church in Newport has a closet full of things that we all might need at some point that you can go and get. I was like, so those types of resource opportunities should really be more available to take a look at as to where you can go quickly to get a wheelchair or a toilet seat or a shower chair, but your 3HC has a list of those types of resources. Anything else? Good? We're good? Awesome. So again, we've got the brochures here, information about 3HC, and then the Gingerbread Festival. This is just sponsorship information if you would like to be a part of the Gingerbread Festival as a sponsor. But the Gingerbread Festival is our primary fundraiser. It is at the Civic Center the weekend of December the 8th. And Friday night is a big preview party where we have heavy hors d'oeuvres and the Embers playing. It's a fun time. And then Saturday and Sunday is open to the public. We do not charge an admission fee because it's not just about raising the funds, but it's also about raising awareness. So we don't want somebody to walk away just because they can't afford $5 to get in. So it's open and free to the public. And then we have donation boxes all around to help support us from that perspective. We have concessions, kids activities, beautiful decorated crab pot trees. If you've ever been to a festival of trees, it's the same thing but with crab pot trees. It's amazing what somebody can do to a crab pot tree. It really is beautiful. So
And Santa Claus.
And Santa Claus will be there, face painting will be there, and it's a gingerbread house competition. So we usually have between 30 and 40 gingerbread house entries. So the whole Civic Center smells of gingerbread and Christmas, and it's lovely. So we would encourage you to come and visit us.
Do you still have the Christmas ornaments
We,
you donate in honor of somebody or memory?
oh yeah, those are the
And-
sand dollar ornaments.
Well, they've been sand dollar, they've been different things.
Yeah,
but
as long as I've been here, which is going over 7 years now, it's been the
sand dollar.
sand dollar, a real sand dollar for $10, and you write the person's name on it, and then they go on memorial trees in the hospice house. So yeah, we'll still be doing that.
And that usually comes out through what?
It usually goes out through end of year mailing, and people who get the end of year mailings are folks that have made donations in the past. But also it's going to be posted on our website and on our Facebook page, which is the Crystal Coast Hospice House. So, yep, good. Thank you for having me.